Good morning, folks, and welcome back to Wishwell Farms. In today's video, I will be sharing with you the details of our 2025 vegetable crop plan. The seeds we ordered, how much we ordered, when we're planting, where we're planting, and what we expect to harvest off of those plantings. So if that sounds interesting to you, please stick around. But we're not going to be talking about it out here because it's cold. Let's head into the greenhouse where it's nice and warm. That feels better. This is our very first hydroponic greenhouse tomato planting of 2025. If you're interested in learning more about that, check in the description below for a couple links to the past few videos. All right, let's sit down here and get started. All right, before we dive into our 2025 vegetable crop plan, I just want to give you a little bit of background about me and Wishwell Farms. But first, I'm going to put my glasses on because I can hardly see. Oh, that's better. So, I am a fourth generation farmer, originally a dairy farmer, but we sold our dairy in 2001, and that's when I transitioned to full-time vegetable production. We still grain farm, field corn and soybeans, about 1,300 acres, and I raise 65 acres of vegetables on our home family farm. We have 5 greenhouses where we grow hydroponic tomatoes, just mainly for the early market at farmers markets. And like I said already, we grow about 65 acres of vegetables, fruits and vegetables, mainly vegetables in the fields. So I'm 51. I've been doing this full time for 24 years, and I've actually been growing sweet corn since the early 90s. So over 35 years of sweet corn growing experience. So what I'm getting ready to show you here on the computer are a series of spreadsheets that have kind of evolved over time, and it's what I use to plan what all I am going to purchase, where I'm going to plant it, when I'm going to plant it, how much I'm going to plant, all those good things. So I know there are better tools out there these days for planning these things, but this is what has worked for me over the past 20 some years, and I don't really have any intentions of changing. I like the way I do it, so it's not really any kind of secret what I'm getting ready to show you. It's just going to be 25 years of my knowledge put into spreadsheets to help me know how much to plant and when to plant in my vegetable fields. And a lot of this can be used in your home garden as well, at least for some of these crops. So without further ado, let's dive in and take a close look at what I got here. All right, let's start off with our 2025 seed order. I went over some of this in a prior video when we went through our seed catalogs, but this is the actual final order. And some of these numbers I'm getting ready to show you, or that you see here on the screen, are not everything that we are planting because we do carry over some things from the prior year. But let's just start over here on the green beans. You can see I'm planting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 varieties. But you can see my main variety is Valentino right here, 640M. By the way, if you're wondering what M is, that is 1,000 seeds. So 640 equals 640,000 seeds. They come in 80M bags. So these numbers should be in increments of 80. Dark Horse was a new one I tried last year. I really liked it. I actually think it looked better than Valentino. Valentino was not as dark. So as the name states, Dark Horse, it is a really dark bean. So we upped our order of that this year, and those are going to be our 2 main varieties. The yellow wax beans came in pounds instead of M's, so I got a 25-pound bag of that coming. And then there's 2 new ones that Rupp Seeds wanted me to trial this year, Sanford and Jaguar. I didn't need to order any beets because we are planting Moneta, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit when we get into our planting schedule. I had plenty of that on hand, so I did not need to order any beets. Next is our 5 varieties of broccoli, and I don't plant a lot of broccoli. I'm only going to be seeding 1 time, so that's why I only have 1,000 seeds of those 5 varieties. Brussels sprouts. I haven't planted these for over a decade. I decided to give them a shot on kind of a trial basis. We're just going to grow like 1 row, maybe only a half a row. I did not even need 3,000 seeds. That's just, sometimes that's the smallest increment you can purchase. And this Gustus, That is one that my seed catalogs did not carry, but they were able to get it. And thanks to a subscriber, I learned about Gustus, and we'll be trying that one out. In addition to Capitola and Churchill. Cantaloupe. I always have a couple thousand seeds of cantaloupe left over, but these are the two varieties that we have great success with, Aphrodite and Avatar. Cabbage, I am trying it again on a trial basis. We're just going to do a row of it, so not a whole lot. Just a couple hundred seeds, actually. We're not planting 3,000 seeds. Once again, that's just the minimum size package I could purchase, and those should carry over for a couple years for me. Cauliflower. Flame Star is kind of a yellowish orange cauliflower, as well as Clementine. De Purple is a purple one, and then the rest of them are just white, traditional white varieties. Oh, if you're wondering why this is green, green came from Gowan seeds, blue came from Crop King, we'll talk about those in a minute, red came from Seedway. Seedway is a popular company, probably more so in the Pennsylvania area. All these different seed companies service most everywhere in the United States. Gowan is more nationwide. Rupp is more regional, you know, Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, and they go further than that as well, but those are their main states. And then Seedway is probably, they might be a nationwide company, but I know they service a lot of the East Coast from New York, or the New England states all the way to Florida. All right, back up here at the top in column 2. I'm gonna try a little bit of honeydew. That's mainly just for me and my wife to enjoy. I don't really sell those anymore. We just do like a half a row of them. Cucumbers. These are some of our favorite varieties of cucumbers. Bristol Brickyard Raceway. They have great disease packages, and they're really long and straight and dark, just beautiful cucumbers. We're trying 2 different pickles this year. Eureka and Carolina. And I'm only doing the pickles on a trial basis. We might do 1 row of them, so not a whole lot. We'll see how they go. We have a lot of demand for pickles, and I mentioned this in a prior video, but I don't enjoy picking them. And I know my crew doesn't enjoy picking them. And when it's hot and humid out, you almost got to be out there picking them every day. So it can be kind of a pain in the butt. But we're going to give them a shot. Some of these things that I'm trying on a trial basis, that I'm saying that I'm just going to give them a shot, try them out again, and it's been a while since I've grown them, it's from some of my subscribers. They suggested that I do a row or 2 to trial some new things, or things I haven't grown in many years, just to show my subscribers that may be just home gardeners that are interested in learning more about growing some of these vegetables, how I do it. So thank you to some of you who suggested doing this. It's probably going to create a little bit more work on my part by seeding in here, transplanting, watering, spraying, harvesting all these new different crops, and filming them and editing them. But I think it's going to be worth it in the long run. We'll give it a shot and see how it goes. All right, back to the spreadsheet here. We're on peppers. We love 1819. I know it's a big old long list of letters and numbers there. We just call it 1819. And redfish. These are great peppers that are blocky with 4 lobes, thick-walled, and turn green, start out green and turn red. We are going to try a sweet banana this year. That's one of those trial varieties I mentioned. We always grow some jalapeno and habanero. That's what Ray Pical is. And those are mainly grown for our value-added product called sweet pepper relish that we produce in our commercial kitchen. And by the way, I have failed you all, and I apologize. I have not filmed our commercial kitchen yet, our certified commercial kitchen. It has been a disaster because my brother stores his freeze-dried candy in there, and now he's in the maple sugar season, collecting sap and getting ready to boil it all down, and it's just a wreck in there. So I still intend to film it and show you guys our commercial kitchen, but we got to get it cleaned up first. All right, next up, tomatoes. You can see there I prefer non-pelleted. Pelleted tomatoes do not hold as well from year to year, so I try to get raw seed on the tomatoes. They'll carry over for many years. We call them red rounds, so our regular beefsteak style red round tomatoes. Our Rambler, Red Snapper, Wind Up, STM 2255, I'm trying a new one this year called Maverick from Gowan. The ones in white are from Rupp, if I failed to mention that. Green is from Gowan, red is from Seedway. So we're trying a little bit of Maverick, and Windup is a new one from Rupp that I'm trying this year as well. And I have planted red deuce before in the past. We're going to try some again for one of our hydroponic greenhouses to see how they do. I do plant a little bit of Roma, the variety Mariana, and Carolina Gold. We've also planted BHN 871, but we like Carolina Gold just fine, so we're going to stick with that one. We're going to double the amount of eggplant this year. Rupp doesn't carry this variety, and I like a spineless variety. So we're going to be planting Thanos. It's the same one we planted last year. I love this eggplant. It is a classic dark teardrop shaped eggplant. We're going to be planting 2 rows this year instead of 1. And down here from Crop King, our greenhouse hydroponic tomatoes. These are all indeterminates. We grow Geronimo, Torero, and Ondero. Ondero came in late, so I have not seeded that yet. That's coming in next week. It had to be shipped from California. These are all varieties from De Ruyter Seeds, and I believe that's in Holland or Denmark or somewhere over there. But a lot of the seed companies around here can get those. But Crop King is who I usually deal with for getting our greenhouse varieties. There are 2 new ones that I don't have on here. Navarro and Ferrari. I think that's how you say it. Ferraria, something like that. They are new varieties that are brown rugose fruit virus free, or they're resistant to that new virus that is spreading like a wildfire across the nation on greenhouse tomatoes. So all these varieties here that I just mentioned, they're all going to be phased out over the next 3 to 5 years, and they will no longer be available. Only the ones that are resistant to brown rugose fruit virus. All right, in our final column, spending a little more time on this than I anticipated. Squash. Spineless Perfection is our zucchini. Blonde Beauty is our yellow squash. Primavera Spaghetti and Quantum Butternut. And I do have another butternut. I think it's called Betternut with a number. I can't remember the number of it, but I had some of that carried over from last year. We plant basil and dill. Well, I normally just plant basil, and we plant those in 4-inch pots that we sell at the farmers markets to go along with our tomato sales, early tomato sales. And the only reason I'm going to plant some dill is to go along with our pickles. The pollinator variety here on the watermelon is for planting with our seedless watermelon, so they actually set fruit. I'm not going to get into all the science and biology behind all that. But those are our 3 varieties of seedless. El Capitan. Powerhouse is a new one we're trying this year, as well as Sandbar. These have the darker rind pattern, not the dark green, black looking rind pattern, but the darker stripes. And I also have some red garnet left over. El Capitan and red garnet have always been my go-to for the last few years, but we're going to try these Powerhouse. These 2 new ones, Powerhouse and Sandbar. I have not planted yellow watermelon or seeded for quite some time, so these are 2 other ones we're going to be doing on a trial basis. Looking forward to seeing how those sell. Okra, we're planting just a little bit of jambalaya, or jambalaya, however you say that, 2.0, a very short row, just a trial. And there is one other variety there that I forgot to put on, and I can't remember what the name of it is, but it was recommended by a subscriber. But I do have that on hand, and we will be planting that. And our big one, sweet corn. So the M, again, is 1,000. So 50,000 seeds of Bolt, and I do have some carryover of Bolt and a couple other varieties here. So there's about 20,000 seeds in 1 acre of sweet corn. So if I have 50 M of a certain variety of sweet corn, that's about 2.5 acres approximately. We have planted up to 40 acres of sweet corn in the past. We're down to about 22 to 25. That seems to be enough if we get good yields. We'll talk about that at the end of the video when we're talking about how much I hope to harvest off of all these crops. All right, that is our seed order for 2025. Now let's jump into our seeding and planting schedule. All right, here is my seeding and planting spreadsheet. And this has been kind of revamped over the years and is what works for me. I'll explain it to you really quick just so you can understand it. Let's just start with cauliflower. In the white right here is my seeding date. And then below it in yellow is my transplant date. And I usually give a few days for each one of those just so I'm not locked into one day. As long as I'm in that range, I'm usually okay. And then I put how many rows I want to have. Over here, I put what size of insert it's going to be in. So this is a 72 count Pro tray, and I'm going to transplant those at a 2-inch spacing. And what I don't have on here is that they go 2 rows to a row of plastic. So it's a double row planting, kind of like I do my bell peppers. And then down here you can see I have my varieties, how many trays of each variety I'm going to plant, and how many rows those trays will equal. So if I add all that up right there, it should equal 6 rows of cauliflower. You can see over here I have a second planting. I used to do 2 plantings, but I no longer do that. And then over here and up above and over here to the right are just some notes that I have kind of jotted down over time. You know, when we had a season that was way too late, you know, I wrote here that in 2008 and 2016, so you can see I've been doing this for quite a while, I didn't transplant until the 8th to the 13th. I don't know the exact date without looking back on that spreadsheet, but it didn't make it in time. It got froze off, so I know to never plant that late. So this first planting here, this will give me a nice early fall harvest after Labor Day, mid-September, and carry me over until the end of October. So hopefully that explains everything. But, you know, I'm not going to go over all these varieties. It's the same thing that was on my seed order, in addition to some of the ones I may have carried over. So we did go down to cabbage here. You can see I'm only planting 1 row. Same with Brussels sprouts, a half row, 1 time. And the reason I didn't delete some of this stuff off here is just because it was already on there for when I used to plant multiple plantings. Let's see here. Looks like I forgot to add that other okra there that I ordered. Broccoli. And you can see over here I made some notes that green magic turns brown too fast. It's a beautiful broccoli, but it all comes on right away at once. And I decided to quit growing it. I don't think I've ever grown Fortress, I think Fortress is the only new one this year. But I decided to do 2 plantings of broccoli. We went through the 1 planting so quick last year, we decided to do 2. And I think this is the one I normally do right here, so I've added a second planting a little later to help continue having broccoli while I'm harvesting the cauliflower and the cabbage. 3 plantings of cucumbers. So if you're interested in seeing this up close, you're just going to have to pause the video and jot some of these notes down. By the way, we are in Zone 6A here in Northwest Central Ohio, if that helps you at all. So you can see a lot of our transplant dates on our first planting are always about May 15th to May 20th. If I see we're clear of frost in the forecast after May 10th, we will go ahead and start putting stuff in. But if there's a chance of cold all the way up until the 15th or 20th, I will wait till the 20th to plant. Putting out your crops during cold nights has no benefit. So you run a risk of getting a frost and wiping out your crop. So it's better to wait until you are 100% sure you're not going to get a late frost. We have had a frost, actually a late freeze, on May 23rd one time, and I lost almost all my strawberries. So it can happen. It's very rare, but it can happen. All right, next, pickles. I'm only doing them 1 time. I know someone like Veggie Boys, who is a big pickle grower, are probably growing pickles 3 or 4 times. You can see I used to do cucumbers 4 times, but we've backed off and just do 3 plantings. A lot of the stuff that we used to do 4 plantings on, like cukes and zooks and cantaloupe, is because we wanted to have something to harvest all the way almost till frost. But we kind of wind our season down just a little bit earlier now because we don't grow pumpkins anymore. If you're wondering why I don't grow strawberries and pumpkins anymore, check out the video down below in the comments or in the description box. I have about a 45 or 50 minute video explaining all the reasons why we are no longer growing those crops. We may grow them again in the future, but not this year or last year. Zucchini, we plant those 3 times. I only plant 1 variety, Spineless Perfection. How did my cat get in here? How did you get in here? I have this greenhouse sealed off tight, and I just see my cat come walking through. There must be a crack in one of the roll-up sides where she snuck in. All right, yellow squash. I do 1 planting of yellow squash, Blonde Beauty, winter squash. I used to plant those out with the no-till system on our cover crop of rye, cereal grain rye with our pumpkins, but since we don't grow pumpkins, we are no longer putting rye out, and we decided to just plant those on plastic like we do our zucchini, cucumbers, all that stuff. So I plant 2 rows of each Quantum and spaghetti. 1 row Quantum, 1 row of Better Nut 900. There's that other variety I was telling you about. Better Nut 900. Eggplant, we're going to be doing 2 rows. Peppers, we used to do 8 rows of peppers. You can see I'm down to 4 rows. Just don't sell as many peppers as we used to. If I grew yellow, orange, they all start out green. They go green to red, green to yellow, green to orange, green to white, green to purple, so on and so forth. Red's by far the most popular for our market. We just stick with red. But if I was to grow those other varieties or colors, I probably could sell more. But 3.5 rows of bell peppers and a half row of the non-bell peppers. Tomatoes. I planted up to 10 rows of tomatoes. When I say a row, I'm talking a 500-foot long row. All of our rows are about 500 feet long. So from here on out, you know what I'm talking about. Or when you're looking at this and you're wondering how long a row is, I should have mentioned that right off the bat when we started. So I plant 3 rows now, 500 feet long. So I don't plant a lot of field tomatoes, mainly because I have so many hydroponic tomatoes in these greenhouses. But when the field tomatoes come on, we kind of wind these down in the greenhouses and rip them out, clean out the greenhouses, and get ready for next winter. There's all the varieties we already talked about. So you can see I'm only planting like 2 flats of each of those varieties. We space those a little further apart, 2.5 feet. I should be mentioning that in some of these other things we talked about. Peppers, I plant a double row on plastic, 1.5 feet between my plants, so 18 inches. Tomatoes are on one row of plastic is 1 row of tomatoes, 2.5 feet spacing. Cantaloupe, I put 2.5 foot spacing. I used to do 3, but I think I changed it up to 2.5 foot. We start off with 8 rows. You can see they're all transplanted May 15th again. And then on June 10th, we tighten it up just a little bit. We don't go quite a month. And then June 25th, we really tighten up that 3rd one. We don't want to have a big gap. We want to kind of be able to walk right from planting 1 into planting 2, and we may even have to go back to planting 1 and still pick a few extra that are still out there that are coming on late. But what we don't want is to completely run out on planting 1 before planting 2 is ready. So it changes a little bit every year. And I have fine-tuned these dates to almost be perfect for us each season. So I still have a variation, a range on the planting and the seeding and transplanting dates, but this has worked out really well for us following these dates. So if you are interested in planting succession plantings of cantaloupe, take a picture of that or pause it and check that out. And you can see we go from 8 rows to 6 rows to 4 rows. So as demand decreases throughout the season, so does our amount we plant. Then you can see right here, I got some notes here about how late I can plant some of the plantings. We used to do a 4th planting on cantaloupes. The main reason we stopped that, other than just not needing them later in the season, is because the shell, the rind, is it rind or rind? Rind of a cantaloupe gets soft. They bruise really easy. They still taste great. They tend to start getting a little watery, more watery, and a little on the blander side, and the shells or the rind gets soft and bruises so easily. So we just quit doing that 4th planting. Onions, I've been doing 1 row for the last couple years. We're doing 2 rows this year because my brother Joel had an extra row in his garlic patch. So we're going to put 1 row out really early, and then the second one right here where I wrote delivered in mid-May. I'll probably have that first one delivered in mid-April and the second one delivered in mid-May. Watermelon. All right, I got a lot of stuff written here. 1 seed per cell. Same with the cantaloupes. They only get 1 seed per cell. I forgot to mention that. Cucumbers get 2. Zucchini gets 1. All this you can see if you go back in the video and check it out. So I grow these in Ellipots. Let me grab you an Ellipot real quick. This is an Ellipot tray. It's almost like a pro tray. It's really rigid. It doesn't need a flat. They come with a little, I call it a Jiffy cube. It's not Jiffy because Ellipot has nothing to do with Jiffy. But it looks like a little Jiffy pot in a little sleeve. And the reason I do that for watermelons, this is a 50 count tray by the way, is that when we do our watermelons in a standard insert, like a 72 count pro tray, and we go to transplant them, sometimes the root development is not the greatest on seedless watermelons. Seeded watermelons, no problem. But seedless, I would go to pull them out, and if the dirt did not come out of the hole or the cell really well, it would rip the roots right out. And watermelons are a cucurbit, however you say it, and they have really sensitive roots. So like melons, cucumbers, zucchini, pumpkins, watermelons, cantaloupes, those are all cucurbits. And if you pull the stem and the root out, you can't replant it. It won't grow. It has to maintain itself within that root ball. Completely different than tomatoes or peppers. You can pull those out by the roots and replant them very easily. So because we were having so many pull out, we decided to go with Elipots. And it looks, the dirt is like inside a little sleeve. It almost looks like a hose, like a pantyhose. And it's biodegradable. And we plant the whole thing. And when you pull the whole thing out, the roots are encased within that little sleeve. And none of them ever pull out. And you just plant the whole thing. Works really great. We almost get 100% stand that way. And you'll get to see that process when we seed our watermelons coming up here in a month and a half, whatever it is. All right, moving on. Some more notes down here about watermelon, when to plant, when not to plant. Beets. We do our beets with a water wheel transplanter on a row of plastic. I don't want to have to spray herbicides. We like to keep those completely pesticide free, and I can't control the weeds in them in our soils. So we only do one row, but it is a triple row. You can see that right here, 12-inch spacing, triple row. They could be planted a lot closer together, probably twice as close. But since we're using a water wheel planter, my closest spacing of water wheel is 12 inches. So that's why we do that. We just go back and forth on the same row of plastic 3 times. On the outsides and 1 down the middle. And it will have a double row of drip tape. That's what it says right there, double drip. That's what that means. So yeah, we'll be seeding those here in about a month and a half. We plant those, actually, we don't use 72s anymore. We were having trouble with them pulling out because it's almost like the roots want to swell up the root ball in the 72 count pro trays. So we've been using old Elipots and they come out much easier. So I'll have to change that. We aren't using 72s, we're using 50s. Herbs, we already talked about that a little bit. We plant those in 98 count pro trays, and then we'll transplant those into 4-inch pots, herb pots for selling at our farmers markets. And we're gonna try a little bit of dill. I'll probably put those in the pots as well. If I have any of this stuff left over, maybe I will transplant it in the field on plastic mulch and see how it does. And down here we got kale. I'm not doing kale. Giving up on kale and spinach. That's pretty much everything on our seeding and planting schedule for 2025. All right, our planting guide is basically just for me to know where these crops are going to go in our field. So I use a spreadsheet, and each line of the spreadsheet represents a row of plastic. Man, life's getting bright out again. All right, as you can see here, we call this our dairy field. This used to be a dairy cow pasture, and this is where Joel's garlic is. You can see right here, he's got like 8 or 9 rows of garlic and 1 extra row that he had left over where I'll be putting my early onions. You can see we do a drive row between his garlic and our cantaloupe planting 1, and this is where we also would be planting our spaghetti and butternut squash, and then we'll have about 1.5 acres here open for sweet corn and green beans. Next up, we have the field that's beside our grape tomato greenhouse, and it's 12 rows. I think it's only actually about 11 rows, but no, it is 12. So 9 watermelon. We like to do only 8 or 9 rows between drive rows. That way it eases it to harvest. We can get the product out to the drive row, to the tractor and wagons easier, and it's easier for spraying if we have to spray the crops. Tomatoes, we got 3 rows there of our early tomatoes, our first planting of tomatoes. And right here is another open acre for sweet corn and green beans, and our grape tomato greenhouse is right here on the other side to the left of the corn and beans. Right here is our main vegetable field that I've been planting our high value crops on raised beds for probably over 20 years. It was time to rotate some stuff out. I have rotated a little bit from every now and then, every few years, but not enough. So you can see here, this is a large area that used to be rows. These are 500-foot long rows, by the way, with a drive trail down the center. And there's a tree line and a creek here, and all the plastic in green is degradable plastic, so we don't have to pull it up. It'll biodegrade on its own. So we got corn and green beans here, corn and green beans there, and on the bottom of each side. So we're not using very much this year. Only about a third of the field, maybe only a quarter of the field for some of our vegetable crops. Early planting, or first planting of zucchini and cucumbers, eggplant and peppers, and then we got planting number 2 of cucumbers and zucchini over here. And this is our third planting of cantaloupe over here. Third planting of zooks and cukes, and a second planting of tomatoes. And there's where our second planting of onions will go. And this is kind of that trial area. Some of the items that I haven't grown for a while or don't really enjoy growing, but we're trialing them again. Yellow squash, pickles, cabbage, and a little bit of Brussels sprouts and okra and beets. All right, this is a new field here that's real close to the other vegetable field. This is where our early sweet corn was last year, so the field should be nice and clean. Cauliflower has been planted here before and it's always done really well. So I decided to put all of our cole crops, or brassicas, down here next to our creek, which is right here. And then we have another open acre or so for some sweet corn and green beans. I had strawberries in this field for probably over a decade. But it's been sweet corn for 3 years in a row, and it was time to move the sweet corn to somewhere else. So we'll see how the broccoli and cauliflower do there. And finally, our greenhouses. So each one of these rows or blocks here represents a greenhouse. And our greenhouses have names. They're also numbered, but it's easier for me just to go by names because they're all different, a little bit of a different shape. So we got tall house, long house, small house, and grape house. The plants that are in this greenhouse that my last video showed me transplanting is what's going to be going in the tall greenhouse here. Long house was just seeded yesterday and is in my basement germinating right now. It's also 30 feet wide, but this one's 150 feet long. The small house is only 21 feet wide by 96 long, and our grape house is a traditional 30 by 96, but I am able, since I'm not growing in the Dutch Beto bucket system in there, I'm using coconut core bags. I can squeeze in an extra row in there. That's why there's 6 rows there. All right, before I move on to what I hope to harvest off some of these crops, I want to show you our sweet corn and green bean planting schedule. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this just because the video is getting really long, but you'll get an idea of how I know when to plant my sweet corn plantings, and you can pause this and look at it more closely if you need to. All right, so here we go. I'll just explain this real quick. All these numbers up here are years, 2007 through 2017. That is when I started this spreadsheet, 2007. So we're coming up on 18. This is year 18. But I ran out of room and I stopped putting the years down here. So I could actually look back quickly and see, am I planting on a similar day as I did back in that year? So for example, my first planting in 2016 was on April 16th. So for my first planting, I shoot for April 10 to 20th here in Zone 6A in Ohio. And I plant 70,000 seeds of bolt and 35,000 seeds of kickoff. And you can see that's 3 acres and 1.5 acres for a total of 4.5 acres on planting number 1. And SHQ just means that is the type of variety it is. It's a super sweet, an augmented super sweet. Like they also have names like table sweet. They're just the tender super sweet varieties. And that's what all of them are. You won't see sugary enhanced or triple sweets or synergistics on my spreadsheet. Only sugar super sweets, SHQs. Then you go down here to planting number 2. I try to put a follow-up planting shortly after, maybe a week later, of kickoff. Bolt is only getting planted one time. I do another acre of kickoff just in case we get some snow or ice that hurts the corn. I still have a nice acre or 2 to come back onto here. And I messed up here. That's not 2 acres. That's only supposed to be 1. So 1 more acre of kickoff. You can see 20 M equals about 1 acre. And then we get into our main season varieties here starting at the beginning of May. And I got to follow these pretty strictly. So if I know we're going to get a rainy day that's going to make it impossible for me to get into the field, I might go in a day or 2 early. Sometimes you got to wait till after the rain passes, because if you put them in too early, you're going to have corn on top of corn, and you're going to have to skip some of your harvesting and move into the next patch before it gets ahead of you. So timely plantings are very, very critical in having success and properly planted succession plantings of sweet corn. So you can see here, I'm not going to go over all the details here, but those are the varieties we're planting and how much of each one. 0.5 means 0.5 of an acre. That's about 12 M, and it's a 75-day maturity. So this is the maturity over here. 70-day up to 76-day, it looks like. 3.5 acres on planting 2. And Epiphany and Cosmic. Cosmic's new for me this year. Epiphany I did do a little bit last year, but we're going to trial both of those again this year. And then you can see there's my 3rd planting. No, that's the 4th planting. Then we go up into my number 5 planting. A lot of these are just repeated. Number 6. Number 6 is not a real big planting, only 2 acres, just because in my experience, this one almost gets me to Labor Day. So this planting is just to make sure I don't run out, just in case this comes up a little earlier than normal, or comes on earlier than normal. This one, sure, I get through Labor Day. It's planted June 6th to 10th. For me here in Ohio in Zone 6A, my Labor Day planting is going to be June 15 to 19. I skip this one here. I don't ever plant June 8 to 12. It looks like I did for about a decade, but I don't anymore. So June 15 to 19 is going to be my Labor Day. If I plant on the 20th, I may miss the Labor Day harvest. And that's like the last big hurrah for sweet corn season. It really dives after that. If I plant before June 15th, all my corn may be too ripe or already harvested before Labor Day. So, you know, it's you got to get in there that 3 to 5 days and get that planting in, at least for me here in Ohio on those days, for a good Labor Day harvest. And there's all my varieties. So I can quickly take this sheet out with me to my barn where I store my seed, and I can see all my varieties here and how much I have of each one, and then take them out there and put them on the planter for seeding, planting. I got seeding and transplanting on my mind. Page 1 is 16.5 acres. Page 2 is 5.5 acres. So you can see I'm only planting 22 acres this year. And you can see after Labor Day, that's when we are really fighting corn earworm, European corn borer. And that is when we move to 4 final plantings of, at least 3, of a BT corn. So this is considered GMO, but it does have a herbicide resistant gene bred into it, but I don't spray Roundup on my corn, okay? Don't worry, there's no Roundup being sprayed on my corn. I've gotten ripped so many times about spraying Roundup and glyphosate. It's not being sprayed on my corn. So, but it does have the BT gene in there, which is Bacillus thuringiensis, I think that's how you say it. It's an all-natural, it's a spore, and it's harmless to humans, and it will wreak havoc on any kind of worm. So we have to have those for those final few plantings if we want to have worm-free corn. If we plant at the mid-July, that'll get us to October 10th to 15th, and usually that's around frost. So that's late enough for picking sweet corn for me. All right, we're nearing the end here. Bear with me. I just want to show you real quick my green bean planting schedule. So there's all the varieties we already talked about on my seed order. Some of them are carried over from past years, and I just want to get cleaned up on them. But you can see Valentino and Dark Horse are the main 2 varieties here. And then I got some notes here. If rain is coming, tighten that planting to 3 to 5 days apart, because if I get beyond 7 days between plantings, I will run out of green beans. We pick green beans once a week. I will pick them twice a week if absolutely necessary, but I would prefer just to pick like on Tuesday. Mondays is a huge harvest day for everything on our farm, and so are Fridays. I do not want to pick green beans on Monday and Friday, so it usually happens on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. They're chilled, put in a cooler, and ready for Saturday sales. 90% of our sales on our farm come on Saturdays alone, so we're usually picking and harvesting all week long and putting it in a cooler for a big day of sales on Saturday. Now, we are selling things throughout the week at some of our roadside stands and other farmers markets, but it doesn't even compare to Saturday sales. So what I'm getting to here is if it rains or I see rains coming, I will even put those plantings 3 or 4 days apart. Even though they might almost overlap, it's better to have too many beans than not enough, because then you gotta either not have beans to sell, you're losing money that way, or you gotta go buy some beans to supplement your own. And yes, you'll make some money back, but you got the expense of buying someone else's beans when you've already had the expense in rent, fuel, chemicals, seed, all that good stuff. So Very important to have your own crop to harvest if you have planted it or have the capabilities of getting it planted and have the ground for it. So you can see here, I start planting green beans on May 1st, and I wrap, I'm not going to go through all this, I wrap it up. Well, there's our Labor Day planting, a very important planting to have in. It always happens around July 4th. Fun to be out there planting on July 4th weekend, but it has to be done when you're a farmer. As you can see here, August 6th to 8th is always my final planting, and even that one is optional. This has normally been my last one, August 2nd to 5th. This one will often go too late in the season and get frosted on. But if I do have nice weather, ground left over, and extra seed, I will put that one out from time to time. All right, that pretty much wraps up all the spreadsheets I wanted to show you. I do have one final one here that I just wanted to mention briefly, and it is our planting locations and dates. So this is also very important for planning properly for the coming year. So I will often look at this from prior years to know when I should plant, as it'll often tell me if I've planted too much or not enough. So as you can see here, I have the date that I go out and plant, how many acres I think it is, how many M's. So if I'm planting 50 M's of something, I'll put 50 M there, the name of the variety, maybe it's Bolt sweet corn, and then I'll write how many rows it is. So let's say I planted 36 rows of Bolt sweet corn, and it was 40 M, about 1 acre on April 15th. And then right there where I put location, I'll write the 36 rows beside creek in field 15, for example, something like that. So that way I know where that corn is, because when I get down here deeper into the spreadsheet and come harvest time, I might forget when I jump from one field to the next, and I want to make sure I don't miss one of my plantings, so I can refer back to the spreadsheet and know exactly where planting number 3 or number 7 or number 12 was planted at, so I don't miss it. And I can keep an eye on it a few days leading up to harvest, or when it's time to spray for corn earworms. And then I do the same thing for green beans. You can see here, exact same spreadsheet. Date, acres, amount, variety, and location. Just helps me stay organized and know what has been planted or not planted. So as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I was going to share with you all what I expect to harvest off of these mini plantings. Now, some of the smaller crops, like, and when I say small, I mean small in size, like peppers, zucchini, cucumbers, pickles, onions, eggplant, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower. I don't keep close records on those items anymore. I used to keep track of everything, but now I'm just basically keeping close tabs on the larger items, the items that are physically larger and the ones that take up larger acreage or make us more money. So let's just start with sweet corn. Sweet corn is our biggest crop. It takes up the most space and acreage wise, but it doesn't make us the most money. Tomatoes are our biggest money maker. So for example, sweet corn, we hope to harvest somewhere between 15 and 20,000 dozen. Tomatoes in the greenhouses, we're hoping to harvest around 50,000 pounds. Out in the field, maybe 20 or 30,000 pounds. Cantaloupe, probably 5,000 or 6,000 cantaloupes, and 1,000 to 2,000 watermelon. And green beans, probably somewhere around 700 to 1,000 bushels. So hopefully that gives you kind of an idea of what we expect to harvest off of our 65-acre farm. For some of you who are just home gardeners, that's probably mind-blowing amounts. But for those of you who are large farmers, you're probably chuckling to yourself that you harvest that every day or every week. So we're kind of a small, mid-size family farm. Everything we grow is direct to consumer, marketed direct to consumer at farmers markets around Columbus, Ohio, and to a few roadside stands between here and Columbus. Alrighty folks, there you have it. All of our detailed plans for our 2025 vegetable crop growing season. Hope you found it helpful and informative. I apologize if I was vague on some of the things and spent way too much time on some of the others. It's hard to know how to space out videos like this to be the proper length ahead of time. So if I blew through something too quick and you have questions about it, feel free to leave me a comment down below and I'll do my best to answer those questions. And be sure to check the pinned comment at the top of the comment section first, because maybe I came across something during the editing process that I felt like I didn't answer properly or explain well enough, I will put that in the pinned comment. So be sure to check that first before you start leaving comments. But I'm happy to answer as many comments as you have. And again, thank you so much for watching. I know it was a long one. I always enjoy sharing details like this about our farming operation. It was a really fun video for me to make. Well, folks, this is going to wrap up this video. As always, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And I'll see y'all again real soon down on the farm.